All right, I'll call us to order at 6:31 on August 11th, 2021. Everyone's here except Jay and Preston, and they both emailed me ahead of time. We can stand to a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Is there any changes to the agenda? I know Roger said he'd be a little bit late, but he plans on being here. If not, we can get into just reviewing a quick, again, we met last meeting where we looked through the COPS survey, and Dan sent me some stuff, but I tried to keep it to 15 questions, including demographics, just for to make sure we're not losing people. And again, we talked about putting demographics up first, so that way people don't feel like the first 10 questions and then we don't gather that other information. So for us to kind of review, I picked what I thought covered things, but again, it's just a draft. People can tell me others, and I actually included all the demographic questions. Question one, how many years have you lived in St. Albans town? I thought this was an interesting question just because we've got more people moving into the community. So what are perceptions of people who lived here a long time versus newer residents? I think it would just be interesting to see. The gender question, I expanded it from what was in the COPS. They only asked male, female, prefer not to answer. I was looking for something that was a little more inclusive. I don't know if folks are okay with that or if we needed to add more, but I'm trying to understand that not everyone follows in the male or female identity, or even just these identities, but I didn't know how many was appropriate to list.
So my only question was, are these the appropriate things to list? Because I wasn't 100% sure.
I forgot where I pulled this from. I pulled this question from somewhere online.
Okay.
Jen, do you have any thoughts?
I like it. I like that there's a not listed, so that if somebody decides that they want to call themselves something different, they still have the option to fill it in.
Yeah.
Transgender female, transgender male, gender variant, non-conforming, I think are all good answers.
Okay.
Yeah,
Because I was
too, but I wasn't sure if we were like missing
Yeah.
a big population.
I did just I did like a 10-minute Google search and just reading like what's the appropriate amount, and this is where like I forgot the source. I'll look for it again tomorrow and I can send it around. But this was the source of like trying to to be respectful for everyone and give that option. And as Jen said, the not listed allows them to select something that might not be considered here. We asked if they're Hispanic or Latino. Then we asked the race, what race they identify as, and then age group. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts there or anything we need to expand upon or that's not addressed.
No, and I actually went in and I looked up like, okay, the Hispanic Latino thing versus ethnicity versus race, and I was like, whether or not we needed to like add both, or if we could. So what are we trying to get at by asking Hispanic and Latino?
That's just typically been in surveys, and everything I've seen usually has both listed.
It does.
What I can think about, believe it or not, I'm sure there are community members that most of us don't know about that may work, maybe migrant workers of some sort that may fall into that. It might not fall into any of the traditional the races on 4. So I think that's what it gets after.
Do we want to say Caucasians that are white?
I'm good to go with that if
Yeah.
the group does. I again took off the COPS survey, how they had it worded. Not saying the U.S. Justice Department's right all the time, but kind of that's where I got it from. Jen,
I didn't hear what everybody said, but I would say if we're going to put Caucasian, that's white/Caucasian and not one or the other. Because if you just put Caucasian, people will be like, what does that mean?
Okay. All right. Do you have a preference? Should it just be white, or do you think white/Caucasian makes the most sense?
I'm okay with just white.
That's a good deal.
might as well put it both on.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm fine with that. Age group, does anyone thoughts on that?
I think these are good
Okay.
age categories.
So number 6 was where we kind of start to get into the meat of the questions, and it was or community policing, explains community policing involves officers, I forgot to correct that, but it'll say sheriff in the Franklin County Sheriff's Department, working with the community to address causes of crime in an effort to reduce the problems themselves within a wide range of activities. Based on this definition, to what extent do you think the Franklin County Sheriff's Office practices community policing?
So I had one thing. I know you said you were trying to keep it to 15 questions, and I'm wondering if we might be able to eliminate something further on. One of my things was in looking at the original survey, community involvement. I'm wondering to what extent are we interested in trying to find out how much involvement the sheriff's office is doing, or how involved they are with the relationships with community members, such as like possibly question 1, which says, to what extent does your law enforcement agency develop relationships with community members, for example, residents, organizations, and groups? Or question number 2, which says, to what extent does your law enforcement agency regularly communicate with community members, like, for example, through websites, email, or public meetings? So are we interested at all in finding out, like, what type of engagement is the sheriff's office doing with the community in order to help facilitate those types of relationships with the community? I know that Roger has spoken before about how they were handing out the ice cream cards to, the youth and those kinds of things. Do we want to get feedback, and do we think that that might help Roger and his team help build those bridges and build those relationships? If we were to ask that question.
Yeah, I have.
I think some of that falls under question 6, and then you could potentially just add a little onto the bottom, what, like exactly what you're saying, you could add in a question to go along with 6, saying community policing involves officers. What type of community policing have you seen, or would you like to continue to see? Just under that same thing, so it
Yeah,
kind of,
sure. Like add your comments or
yeah,
whatever.
something
like-
along those lines.
So I think that maybe some of these might lend to like a comment, like feel free to add comments or whatever. But
Yeah.
that was kind of my thought, was I noticed that in this one, it specifically had, community involvement, safety, like.
I like that survey. I
I
just
did
was
too.
trying to cut it down.
Yep.
I mean, if we thought people would fill out 28 questions,
Yeah.
I'd go with it. But my hard part, and it was actually more difficult than I thought. Actually, sitting down doing it was cutting out which 13 had to come out.
Yeah.
And still try to give us a range. But I thought some of these actually I thought were important too. But we can kind of discussion. So potential to add one here.
I mean, I guess the question is, what is it that we want out of the survey? What is it that, what feedback do we want from the community? Do we want to know just that they're pulling people over? Do they feel like they're being treated fairly? Or is it that we're looking for like the overall scope of what they're doing and the longevity of how that interaction is going to be sustainable in the long term, and what types of goals they're working towards for the community, as a whole. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that we have to think about those things as we try to put this together so that we can get some meaningful data from that.
I think that makes sense. Does it make sense maybe to run through all the questions
Yeah.
quickly and then?
Sorry.
No, but then have the discussion, because it's like, yeah, we want to do more, but we're gonna have to weigh it, or we just say, heck with it, we're gonna go to 20 questions, or we're just gonna, what happens. I didn't write all of them down in this draft because there's a lot to be listed here, but it was number 6 from the cops piece. But please select 3 issues that are greatest concern to that that you think are the greatest problems in the town of St. Albans. And they list burglaries, child abuse, you know, all the way down through vandalism and underage drinking. And you know, there's about 17 things. So I just thought that would be an interesting one, but it also could be one we cut because it's a lot there and perceptions, not versus data. But I thought that one would be interesting, especially if people gave us the area of town they lived in and say perceptions are different in various ends of town. What the, you know, people down here might be have more traffic concerns because Creamy Stand, where Hill Farm, you might be worried about something completely different.
We didn't ask what area they lived in.
We're gonna, when we set up the survey, we're gonna have it because it's not going to tie their, you guys won't see their answers, but like I'll be able to tie it to like a region, we'll do it, but there has to be a filtering mechanism when people sign in so that we know they're town residents, or, I mean, we're not gonna be able to identify exactly it's a town resident, or if they put a town address, we'll know.
Okay.
Or, and they can also say like a community partner, so it might be someone who has business in the town, but might live in the city or Swan. I think we are interested in that, because perceptions, you know, people don't always know if they live in the town or the city, and perceptions of the city is town, so if they put in an address, we could still look at a broader survey and then say, here's what town residents thought, but the people who gave us addresses in the town and then everyone else.
I think that's useful to Roger, honestly, if we get a bunch back that say, if you think vandalism is a big problem, Roger looks and sees that calls for vandalism in the last. Then there's a communication issue.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's useful, even if it is just.
I'm glad you brought up the word communication. That's what we're looking for. Like, I'm looking for like communication from the sheriff. Like, how is he and his department doing that? We want to focus the question on how well do you think communicates?
And I think that's why it's like a 6A is so useful. You know, are there any things additional you'd like to see the police doing, you know, community-wide instead of law enforcement?
Could we just put like an open box where people could comment after questions and say like, you know, I wanted to say more about this, but I only have 4 answers. So here's
Yeah,
what I
we-
felt like I got stopped and I got a coffee card for like breaking when I was supposed to, or whatever it is. And they could explain
Yeah,
like, wow, they felt it was useful.
Yeah, I think the answers like this help us do the data analysis, but there's the qualitative analysis that the comments that we can kind of read through and, you know, can be helpful as well. So yeah,
Also by doing that, it's still a short 15-question survey, but we open ourselves up to those who want to provide 28 questions worth of information. they
Right.
can.
yeah, and so it'll also lead me to, when we get to the end of this, selecting a survey software that is reasonable within budget and that we're comfortable with. For the town, no one likes us spending a ton of money, so some of these softwares I was looking like they cost like $500 a year and only allow 5,000 answers. Not that 5,000 answers isn't it's a lot, but if the town's investing in one, you know, we're already talking town, would we put out other surveys that aren't just police related if we're gonna have this software that we invest in? So that was one thing that came up. Question 8. To what extent does the Franklin County Sheriff's Office make it easy for community members to provide input? Comments, suggestions, concerns. So I think these are starting to get to some of that communication. Number 9, to what extent do you feel safe in the town of St. Albans when you are outside alone? The survey question asked during the day and at night, I could just put it into one as a way to, you know, there. To what extent do officers in the Franklin County Sheriff's Office treat people fairly?
I like that question.
You know, and I think everyone's gonna have a different definition of fairly, but that's when we start to look at like demographic issues and other things and say, look, was there a difference that we saw there, or age? To what extent are officers in the Franklin County Sheriff's Office respectful? You know, I think that's an issue because I think
Fix the space.
yeah, I saw that. It won't be, this is just a Word document. I've got to put it into a software, whatever software we decide to go with. To what extent do you trust the Franklin County Sheriff's Office? I think that the key of all of this is building trust between the community and the department. I thought that was an important one. To what extent are you satisfied with the overall performance of the Franklin County Sheriff's Office? That can be defined
I was just wondering about another box, like no interaction, because I mean, neither
Yeah.
satisfied nor dissatisfied, kind
Right. No,
doesn't cover
nothing to
that.
judge it on. Right.
Yeah.
They don't have anything to judge it on.
of, like, I had no interaction or something
Right.
along those lines.
right.
I
I
thought
mean-
about the same thing when I was reading this. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, what if they don't have anything to?
Well, it's like, you you know, I think of some of myself, like, I probably actually won't take the survey because I always have great experiences with like, but obviously like, they don't pull me over, they see me, like, like my position in the community, I'm treated well, like, but you know what I mean? Like, you sit there and you go, I've never had a bad experience with Roger and his team, but I also work for town and we pay him, so like, so like that's, I think understanding like everyone's gonna have a different interaction with it and looking for the people, you know, who are living their everyday lives and, you know, how they interact with. Number 14, to what extent are you satisfied with your interactions with the Franklin County Sheriff's Office for traffic issues? And I asked this one because we've actually had a number of people call in the last month complaining and calling them about certain speed issues in town. So I thought, you know, that seems to be the calls we're getting from people.
And I think this is a good place to make sure we have
That
that
no interaction.
no interaction.
That's where I was referencing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then to what extent are you satisfied with your interactions with the Franklin County Sheriff's Office? So again, we kind of hit a few there. I think potentially maybe we could cut one of those out and add another one in, or and maybe to Jen's point, maybe we have a question 16 that's, is there anything you want to tell us that we didn't ask about that allows people to elaborate that we just, yeah, like a free text box to give them an opportunity.
Last time we had, Roger was saying that he wanted or was interested in seeing a question about 911 calls and satisfaction because they were thinking about going with a different service.
Yeah.
So that he would be interested in that information as well.
There was, I do remember that. So maybe,
How many times in the past 12 months have you had contact with law enforcement agency for 911 emergency calls? And then to what extent are you satisfied with your interactions with the law enforcement agency for 911 emergency calls? So 20.
so maybe we cut. So 15 to me, now that I'm looking at it, and 13 are kind of like similar. Like if you didn't have a satisfactory interaction with the Franklin County Sheriff's Department, you're not gonna think highly of their performance.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? I know they're two different things, but they can kind of maybe,
You can merge that with different order.
right, to look to merge those ones. I want to ask about traffic issues, but maybe that also clean that up to, do you think the Frank, you know, you feel like, you know, they're managing traffic.
I was gonna say, I think it's a pertinent question, because if you look at their calls for service and, you know, going through what's going on during the course of a month, that's definitely the biggest one on there is traffic stops.
Right. And and to be fair, everyone, my guess is the city PD would have been more aggressive too. We've been in this with COVID where police have really not done traffic stops unless it was egregious. I've noticed it stepped up quite a bit in the town. I even saw Roger giving someone a ticket when they heading home from work. He goes, and I called him back. I go, I've never seen the sheriff from South Isle give him the ticket. And he goes, kid drove by me 60 miles an hour by my office. As I was pulling out. I had to in a 35. I was like, oh man.
So 20B was, to what extent are you satisfied with your interaction?
Yeah, I got it written down here.
Yeah,
I can.
your law enforcement agency for 911 emergency calls. But was he interested in the actual?
We're interested because
911.
yeah, 'cause
Like
dispatch service.
dispatch?
Yeah, dispatch is with the city,
Right.
and they keep upping the cost. So we just want to monitor the quality we're getting there. Not that there's a ton of other options, but I think it's an interesting.
What's the other option?
Oh, okay. Are there any other that you think we need to massage, or we can combine, or that we're missing? While you're thinking about it too, if no one has anything right off the bat. So I've searched around Survey Monkey's like $500 a year to give us 5,000 questions. There's some other ones, and then when I'm getting to my frugal side, like none of them do basically what Google Docs does, and I get Google Docs is not, or Google Forms is not as pretty, but it's also free. And so like, are we better off just to go that route and test it? Because I just haven't found a software that did everything I wanted it to do. In a perfect world, I'd have a software where people signed in and an address, and I got like decoupled somehow, like, you know, in a perfect way, and it could confirm where they lived in the town or whatnot. And then we wouldn't see it, because I do feel people will be concerned that like we're keeping that tied to them, and we aren't. We're gonna try to remove that. The only thing we'll probably do is in our records, is say they were a survey respondent. So that way we can like send out emails in the future to try to get the linear, like how the attitudes change with people we've surveyed before. The one nice thing is the town has done a better job keeping email addresses. We've collected about 500 since we've launched our CRM between complaints coming into the town and online payments. So like I was actually gonna email a survey out with a letter to all the people that we have emails for already to be like, hey, we're doing this. So like, and then obviously going on social media, but the town's being pretty aggressive on collecting emails so that we can try to communicate with people better and not just send them with postcards or messenger articles they might not be reading. So yeah, postcards are about $1,800 to mail everyone in the town. One postcard. So, and then an envelope with just a piece of paper in it. Just happened to know because we just did that, cost about $2,700. So yeah, that's where like just balancing what we I think for this go around doing these surveys, and we talked about it when we go town meeting day time. See if one, it's legal to stick a survey in with their ballots, but at least have surveys too when people go to vote in person or absentees, because it'd be nice then if you're going to get people from that angle too.
What about like, meeting? That's the Wild West.
I'm not opposed to it. A texting survey. The hard part is when the select board set us up, they actually gave us no budget for this year because it was like they're setting us up as a town meeting. So our budget cycle, like budget literally is set in November for starting next January 1 because they polish it up and then it gets passed in March and then it goes around. So we're eating other budget lines. So and that's fine. We have a few where we can go grab. So I just don't know what I can get for comfort level. But a texting round, my guess is probably about $500. Because we'll have to buy data. We'll have to buy texting data for people who live in the town. But I've done it in other forums and it's not bad. But something I can certainly talk to Carrie about. We might need to, I'm thinking we launch this, we can wait till after the next meeting. I think I wouldn't launch it next week, even if this was perfect, just because of summer vacations. I think once people get back, and I think we leave it out for like a month and a half. And what we might monitor is what do we got for response after the first month? Where does the demo, to make anything kind of statistically accurate, we're getting the survey, we're getting our census data tomorrow. So we'll be able, it should roughly be within a, standard deviation or a couple standard deviations of population by age group. And, do we get, enough, folks who aren't white to take it, and who aren't male and who aren't over 50, we're going to have to, and so maybe then we talk about investing in a text, but.
So let me ask you this, do we send out a second reminder to people who didn't respond? Like, I know at work, I get surveyed all the time. And so if I don't respond to the survey, I always get that, hey, you didn't take the survey. Please don't forget.
We could. Trying to balance the people thinking that's creepy in government, like
I'm just
are we
saying, like,
monitoring that?
Most people that are going to do it the first time, they just make it.
Yeah. So it's,
I'm just.
I mean, I could see us.
I just don't have time and it gets lost in my email.
Yeah.
traffic,
I mean, and we got to define what success is. I mean, in all honesty, if 200 or 250 people took this the first go around, I'd be pretty pumped. Like, I think that's a lot. Like, people will be like, that's not a lot, but it actually is. Like,
If we only send it to 500.
I mean, you think about it, had we not mailed ballots this year, 900 people would have showed up to vote. So, like, to get them to take a survey that doesn't impact money or anything, like, it's just, I mean, we mailed ballots to everybody and 1,800 voted of our 5,000 voters. So it's like, goes to show that, like, even something like voting, which is the ultimate survey for a community, it's hard to pull people along. So I think setting that expectation that we're going to hear from 1,000 people, I don't think will happen. But I think a couple hundred, we have something to work with, and we have this first one's really gonna be our baseline, unless something really sticks out to us. I think it's setting the benchmark, and then where do we relate going forward?
So can I clarify, are we just sending this to the emails that we currently have? Or
So
are
I
we
would-
putting it out as like a general, like call to action, like
Yeah,
on
so
social
we'll
media?
send to the emails we have, we'll put it on social media and we'll put it on our website.
Okay.
And try to drive people and, you know, we'll mention it once a week or, so on, often on social media. We'll try to get Roger maybe to put it out as well. We are gonna push it, but I don't think, we're not gonna invest. If anything, I think the texting makes the sense, I could see us being like, hey, we have got nobody under 30 doing this thing. Like, do we need to do something and, go to the select board, hey, we've tried, we're not getting the answers, like, can we build this? Because Carrie and I were talking, I got to know what I think this group needs for a budget, but I could see us needing, that's something that is good to get feedback on. Because my concern with any of it is how do you reach the people that may not normally take this and may not, they might have some insight to tell us things that we're not getting. I mean, you're always going to get the same people to take it, who vote, who are on social media, who have paid online their bills or whatnot. There's people we're going to miss inherently. And so how do we try to get to everyone?
And are we going to make sure that we do have a budget for 2022 to do this in the future?
Yep.
Okay.
We're gonna see what this one costs, and then budget season starts in October for us. So maybe something we talk about in September is what's a legitimate budget for something like this that we can ask for. Doesn't mean we'll get it, but we put in the ask, and I think we'll get something. They have to give us something. They do, but yeah, we'll see. Is there any other questions that you think need to be worked in besides 20B? I can put a draft together and send it around and we can finalize. And I can have the Google Forms ready for us to look at in September and then ready to roll from there. Any other questions, thoughts, concerns? All right. Seeing none, I'll make those adjustments, move on. The sheriff's just walking in. Perfect timing, Sheriff. Just finished up our thoughts on the survey. I'll send over to you what our feedback was, and if you guys have any feedback before we do a final draft in September, let me know. We are just about to look at your report on your first month in the town of St. Albans. Looks like you were busy.
Yeah, things don't look to be changing.
Anything that surprising anybody in the group have? I don't want to take up too much of the sheriff's time or our time, but I thought, 513 incidences was a lot. That's what, 15 a day?
But know that 263 of those were self-initiated or
Yep.
motor vehicle stops. So
Yep.
it's about that.
Yep.
Yeah, 8 thefts. Do you know the difference between like residential? I don't, but I can get that. The breakdown. Something you'd like to see in the future? Aaron? Well, since I represent business, I was.
My question was, what is the 50 public/agency?
That'll be like we do, like an ATM when they do the drop at the Union Bank up there. Anytime we help the public with anything that take them off, take us off the road. Law enforcement
Agency calls for assistance with like serving paperwork or something.
Or like when we had a small hole on the Palm Shore that we had to fix, but we were trying to gauge July 4th. Was it serious enough to shut down the road and get fixed now, or we had someone come out? So I'm guessing that would have
the
gotten
bid
on.
agency assessed for the towns.
Trying to see if there's anything that. I mean, the stops, but we've seen you guys out and stop, and we know you've been aggressive, and then we've had a few calls into town hall on speeding, so I think folks are looking for that aggressive.
And I take a number of calls also. Right. It's the number one issue for our county.
Yeah. Welfare checks, do those typically come from family members to check on someone else or?
Family members, I just did one today. It's like adult services, that type of thing. But I haven't heard from somebody all day and they usually have phone contact, but they didn't today. It's like, hey, can you check?
And then suspicious events, those typically be something you guys find suspicious or somebody calls you and thinks it's suspicious?
They'll call, someone can call, it can also be officer generated, but it could be, you know, if I get out of my car thinking, oh, there's somebody in the backyard here, or it's a closed business, a suspicious incident, and come to find out it's somebody that stopped to throw something in the garbage or something.
Is there any trends that surprised you or, well, we don't have a trend yet, but are there any that surprised you?
No, this is pretty standard that we see throughout all the county we patrol. We are seeing an uptick. Well, I say an uptick. There's one particular place on Brigham Road that has had a return of a vandalism. That was the Brigham Road store. Somebody broke in there a couple nights ago. They sent back to look at the home. I was just meeting with Mark LaRoe before I came here. It's like, what can we do? He's updating cameras now.
Question I have too is 26 accidents, seems actually high for a community our size. Is there a way, and it doesn't necessarily to this group, but I'm sure you log the instances, are you communicating with DPW to see if there's like an issue with just tree coverage? You know, I had someone call and said, you know, trees covering the stop sign down here, so we went and cut it back so people can see the stop sign.
Yeah, we'll make any notifications. Funny, I just sent Alan a text message before I walked in. For those 26 accidents, you got a lot of activity on the northern side of St. Albans. You know, fender benders, bumpers, you know, the bumpers hitting, that type of thing. A lot of them could be an exchange of information, but if a deputy's in the area, I want them to go and just, you know, make sure the parties are separated and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of those, Corey, could be, you know, pretty minor, almost non-reportable.
Yep. Oh, that's good. But we just know, like, we've got people complaining, like, coming off Kellogg Road in Lower Newland, right there, that intersection, this intersection. We just, from our planning as a town, there's certain intersections that are unsafe. It's good for us to know about it so that as we plan to fix them, hopefully, right, you know, we can make it safer.
4 fireworks calls. Do you think you made it out okay? No,
I thought that was really low. I was actually pretty surprised. I was like, only 4. I was gonna make a comment.
you know, we can't shag them all down.
If that's the high for the year, we're probably good.
But we did seize, funny story, we had a deputy behind a car, it was nighttime. And we had that deputy stop that car because the car was doing fireworks out the window of passing cars. The mom gave me a call the next day and said, hey, you know, you had a deputy seized. Stop my son, that seized fireworks and stuff. Possession of fireworks is not illegal. She was right. But throwing my cars off. So she didn't know that piece. And she goes, oh no, then keep it. That's my job,
Jen, do you have any questions for the sheriff on this?
Yeah, what's TRO, FRO?
That's temporary restraining orders and final relief of abuse orders. There's been a lot of those going around lately. I think COVID had a big impact on a lot of relationships. We've been pretty busy with some of those, and it's the truth again throughout the county.
How many of these, I know Ben asked this question last time, do you think, and I know they go across, even just anecdotally, how much of this activity is related to ending that shelter in place program with the, how's this, you know, some of this been?
You know, I think all in all, it's been pretty good. You know, we've been to a number of overdoses. It's been a little more than we probably go to. And those are some of the agency assistance that we get as well. But all in all, it hasn't been as high as I thought it was going to be or as active. We've had a couple of families that we're trying to help relocate to some place where they can, you know, not be parking at the park overnight, that type of stuff, but other locations. But then they won't be bothered, and that there'll be good services where they're at. All in all, they've really been impacted greatly by it.
Anything on here jarring enough for you guys that it changes something you're gonna do strategy wise that, you know, at this time, or is this all fairly standard? It's just our first time looking at it.
It's fairly standard. You know, the more motor vehicle work we do, the more we're gonna have for like DLS and DUI, you know, the arrests. And all that kind of crimes committed usually involving motor vehicle. That type of stuff. So, you know, if we stay consistent with our approach, I see these numbers still pretty consistent.
I can do for the group too. I was thinking it might be helpful if I build a spreadsheet so that we can monitor like month by month some of them. You know, when Roger sends a report, I can give you the report from Roger, but just fill in the spreadsheet. So I'm someone who likes to look at things linearly, like numbers one time, I'm like, is what it is, but like, how does that look over time?
I didn't see it overdose category on.
Agency is that.
Yeah, but so that nobody's changing those, like, comes in as a medical call, it just stays that, it doesn't get switched.
Right. A lot has to do, Dan, as you know, with like privacy and all that stuff. And again, our goal would be, we want them to get treatment, we want them to get help.
I don't have any other questions. Does anyone have any other questions for the sheriff?
I saw the sheriff were out like before you took over the contract with the town. I think myself, we're in the damn good deal here. Was it, we working like joint with our forces? I mean, I know it's like, I just know the sheriff had pulled someone over from. Wow. We were utilizing governor's highway safety funds that we get from the state to have our deputies that maybe aren't from the area to get familiar with the area and that kind of stuff. Just a week or two before. That shot, hit the ground running.
For your guys' take, I think the biggest thing we've seen at town hall, the sheriff's just doing some training on our end, is animal control and how to handle after hour weekend calls and where does the animal go, because our humane society doesn't take animals. So we're working on a program of where they can go, you know, while we find them a home. Any other public comment? Seeing none. Any other business before the board? No. Did you all have a chance to review July minutes? Concerns there?
Actually, other business, can I bring up something new?
Yep.
So sitting here on Zoom, the sound is terrible and I can barely hear like half of what anybody's saying. And with COVID levels spiking and us being in the high transmission rate, I think it would be really important for us to have better sound quality and, you know, have Zoom access all the time just because people aren't going to feel safe. I know that I have an immunosuppressed husband and a son who can't be vaccinated at this point. I think we should have Zoom available all the time and we should have much better sound quality for any in office meetings because I can barely hear hardly anything that you're saying. And I'm sure that as it's being recorded, it's just going to be, you know, even more jumbled.
Yep, I will bring it up to the select board. Secretary of State right now, because we're out of the state of emergency, still requires an in-person meeting now for any public meeting, so we can't go back to where we were. But we'll talk about investing in sound.
Yeah, I'm just noticing being a sound guy.
Yeah, I'm just also thinking as far as it goes with people with disabilities, you know, wanting to attend, that they can't attend if there aren't Zoom meetings.
Yeah, I mean, Vermont's gonna take a long look at what its public meeting laws mean. I mean, we're in the legislature. I can attend a meeting, but it doesn't count towards a quorum and I can't vote remotely now. So I was in Montpelier all day today for a meeting to be able to vote. So it's a broader legal issue on what the Zoom means. And if the state, because we're a Dillinger rule state, which means we derive all of our authority from the state, we don't actually exist without the state. The concept, we need their permission to allow us probably to do a lot of this stuff. I know it's not the greatest answer, but that's kind of we have these weird rules in Vermont in governance. It's like we still have to send meeting notices to a newspaper, you know, our newspaper doesn't always run them. I think it's an antiquated practice to have to post it in the newspaper, but that's just me. There are things that we gotta look to upgrade. But I will mention that, Jen, and try to get us some better sound equipment here.
Maybe just
For
an
sure.
directional mic right instead of.
I was saying just the microphone probably would.
Because we hear her fine.
Yeah.
It's just the
Yeah.
microphone. Yeah, well, and honestly, a better camera than using the webcam on a laptop. Would probably make sense. That's so, Jen, the issue we don't have this with our select board, because Northwest Access comes and actually uses their mics and uses their video stream. So that's actually how we get better quality at our select board meetings and how we've handled those versus these other ones. So it's probably why it's an issue that hasn't been addressed, and quite honestly, no one shows up to DRB or planning commission meetings at all. So but we'll definitely take a look. Approval of minutes from July 14. Is there a motion?
I motion to approve the minutes as they stand.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I.
All right. Adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, done. Thank you.